All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Owning Your Sexual Self. I have on just a very juicy guest with us today. I'm so excited. We have Auerbach on the show today. I love the archetypes that you pulled into this, the lover, the mother, the author, the mentor, the activist, the priestess, all of those things, because yes, as women, we have the duality of it all. And after years of frustration and failed gimmicks, I know all about those. Trying to respark that passion in your 20-year marriage. And so you created the book The Sure Thing, which we'll totally get into today. I'm so excited. And it sounds like you really wrote this book because you want people and everyone to have access to these life-altering practices based on pleasure. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on to the show today. It's so good to have you. And yeah, how does one even drop into a journey like this that you've been on?
Well, from a lot of frustration,
Yes.
from a lot of built up gunk, and from a commitment to to my spouse
hmm
and to my own pleasure,
hmm
and to really embodying the pleasure that I didn't honestly, Rachel, I had no idea I,
hmm
how empowering and activating having a weekly pleasure practice was going to be just for me in my
hmm
body. I started in my 50s. We've been doing this for this weekly practice for over 5 years. And it has inspired me to learn how to ski, train in Aikido. My dream is to be Shodan by the time I'm 60, which is in a few years, which is black belt. We'll see. I'm not
Yeah.
attached. But this part of myself, which I call my wild sensual self, who I've
hmm
named Vivacious Viv, has I had brief encounters with her in my 20s and 30s, and
hmm
um, kind of recognize this part. But since we started this practice, she has fully come to the forefront of my consciousness, and I am intimate with her. And
hmm
so every week, and this was a surprise. I mean, so much about this practice was a surprise. She has this canvas that, this energy of Shakti creativity, because, our sexual centers in our genitals, in our belly, in our belly kiva, in our womb. Guess what? You know this. It's our creativity center. So
hmm
we're going to open that up. We're going to, open that channel. Wow,
hmm
all kinds of surprises, all kinds of creative expression
Yeah.
and fulfillment that I didn't even know I wanted, right?
hmm
Has
hmm
come out. So I don't know if that answers your question. It was,
Yes, plus
yeah.
more.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that's such a conversation that we have here on the show and you really just put an example to it, but I often say like when we tap into our pleasure, when we tap into our sensuality, our sexuality, how that flows through to other parts of our life. It's like it truly is like the secret sauce, the missing piece, like however you want to describe it, like it is the thing that is missing for a lot of people. And I think for so many people, right, we're just waiting for that desire, that pleasure, that intimacy to just sort of happen. Like, oh, it'll show up one day. And so I love that your work really flips the script on that. And so when you are speaking, you talk about, right, 100%, we have 100% responsibility for our pleasure. And so I'd love to start with that. Like what do you really mean by that in your own words?
Yeah. Well, I was actually on a walk with a friend here locally, on a hike, and she said that, and immediately I was like, wow,
Mm,
yes, I love that. Because and so I really took it on, and all of a sudden it was like, now I no longer had anybody to blame,
mhm,
including myself, right? Which often we like blame ourselves, and we, shame ourselves. We're in a society that is encourages this.
mhm,
I believe, so that we stay repressed and we stay small. So we don't actually connect in with, I believe, sensual sexual energy is some of the most potent energy on the planet,
absolutely.
possibly in the universe.
Mhm,
And so, can you imagine if all of us are really connecting in with that? we are not going to take it anymore. We are
Hmm.
not going to take the double standard. We are not going to take all of the stuff that's going on here in the United States and the oppression and the repression and everything. So, of course, the domination culture that we live in is represses that, right? And wants us to disconnect and disassociate with our sexuality, with our sensuality, with that like lifeline into, I want to say, like the sun, the power of the sun potential,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That can fuel us. And
Hmm.
so I feel like connecting in with owning our pleasure, owning our sensuality and sexuality is a radical act. It
Hmm.
is an act of empowerment, of self empowerment, and in this culture that we live in, absolutely a revolutionary act.
Hmm.
And so, 100% responsible means that I'm responsible for my pleasure. I'm responsible for my orgasm. I'm responsible for making sure that it feels good, if making sure my body feels as good as I want it to feel.
Hmm.
And what I've found is that it's an infinite exploration because pleasure just is infinite. And so how good do I want my body to feel? It's also in that 100% responsibility is boundaries,
Hmm.
is a very clear yes and a very clear no. And it's a journey to get there. And we're continually, evolving and tuning in to what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And I'll tell you, when I started this, Rachel, this practice of finding out what it is that I wanted, I was in my 30s, and I would ask myself, I took on a practice of asking, what do I want? And most often when I first started, I don't know. Confusion, disassociation, I don't know. I don't know. Perfect.
Hmm.
That's a perfect place to begin, just having the intention to continue to ask the question. And eventually I started, oh, this is what I want to eat for breakfast. This is what I want to wear. This is what I want. And then, you move into the sexual, sensual realm, and it gets more clear as we hone that muscle. I call it the I know what I want muscle.
Hmm.
Just like
Hmm.
anything, we have to cultivate it. We have to, practice.
Yeah.
And then we can bring that into when, things are a little heightened. When, whether it's sex, whether it's, we're in a conflictual conversation, whatever, we can use that muscle because we've honed and toned it to be like, this is what I want, this is a yes, this is a no, and we can really attune to that channel inside of us, our inner guidance system,
Yeah.
if you will, about what would be 100% responsible for me in this
Hmm.
moment.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, you are so speaking my language right now. Like this is all, yes, all of what we talk about often on this show. And I think it helps the person also take their power back when we can claim this. Like this is 100% my responsibility. This is not, again, as you said, not blaming others, not putting my pleasure into the hands of anybody else. I think this especially shows up in partnership of thinking, well, he should know how to turn me on, he should know how to get me to the orgasm, or for the partner to think that, right, it's my job. I gotta get her there. I gotta make this happen for her. Because as you said, the yes and the no are equally as important. She might not want an orgasm that day. She might not want like intimacy that day, and that's okay. And yeah, I love this. I'm totally on board with this, that our pleasure is our responsibility. And what do you think, and because you've been doing a lot of work with this, have a book around this, what do you think is the thing that people often misinterpret when they hear a phrase like this?
I think they take on like, oh, responsibility,
Mm.
another burden,
Hmm.
another chore to add to my ever growing to-do list. And in fact, and I get that, we're all overwhelmed. There's so much going on. There's so many demands on our time for, no matter who you are or where you are in your life. That is the truth. And there's, of course, with so many demands for our attention, right, with devices and so forth. So
Hmm.
I understand how that could feel like it's another thing to do. And
Yeah.
it is another thing to do. However, it's a thing that will feed and energize and rejuvenate us. It's
Hmm.
like doing, anything that we do, like eating nourishing, healthy food, right?
Yeah.
Any kind of physical activity that you do, whether it's yoga or hiking or running or biking or swimming, or you do it. You may not always want to, you may not always feel like it, but after you do it, you know it's good
Hmm.
for you, and you
Hmm.
know it's going to be beneficial for your life and
Yeah.
for your body and for your energy. That is absolutely the same thing about taking 100% responsibility for your pleasure and then having a pleasure practice. A
Hmm.
weekly pleasure practice is what I recommend. Certainly, you can do it more often, but start with having a weekly pleasure practice where what you do, whether you're practicing solo or with a partner or with however many consenting adults that you want to practice with, that that's your commitment to cultivate that, to start to play and explore and be curious about pleasure,
Hmm.
about orgasm, about sex, about making requests, about having boundaries, about staying attuned. And I imagine what I found is that sometimes I don't know it's a boundary until I've crossed it.
Mm,
And then
yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. So we be gentle and compassionate with ourselves. We're doing the best we can. And now we know, oh, that's the boundary.
Hmm.
Okay. So now I'll know that for next time. We are constantly learning and growing
Mm.
and becoming. We're not, it's not like some place of arriving, right?
Hmm.
So we just gentle with ourselves, kind to ourselves, and now we know that, okay, that's good. Now I know where that is. Okay, now I can feel that container, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I like that yeah, going back to what you were saying around the another thing to add to the to-do list, right? Because I think that yeah, taking on a pleasure practice and committing to doing something like this weekly or more, I might add, doesn't just have to be like I would say weekly is the minimum. But it like fuck the patriarchy, right? Like we're in this society that like success equals progress, and I think that that is so like the pleasure practice undoes all of that. It really it shows a precedent to like we are in control here of like what we want to experience. We can lead our own destiny with this, and I think it's yeah, just allowing women to like soften more of that. And when you, especially for the person that is resilient against the pleasure practice, if they're feeling like well, I don't know how to connect to my body or I'm feeling resistance to this. They have those walls of shame, right? I see them all the time in my practice. But I can be willing about when you get to a place where those walls start to come down, which the pleasure practice is going to help to do that, the pleasure practice is way more fun probably than doing the dishes or putting away your laundry or making that dentist appointment, right? Like whatever it is. And so I think that's where I was saying like the get it moving away from the we have to be doing something to be successful, to be worthy, to be seen. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting on my pedestal now, so I'll stop it there. I think you're understanding, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'll let you take it back over.
What I find is that the more we open that channel of pleasure by having a regular, reliable practice, and like you said, sure,
Hmm.
minimum once a week. You could have it every day.
Hmm.
I highly recommend simple little pleasurable things like just, touching your hand and feeling how that feels and letting that, or touching your face, and just like you touch somebody who you absolutely adore. But
Hmm.
just do that
Hmm.
for yourself.
Hmm.
And so just little moments of pleasure. So then what I found is that then doing the dishes, I can find more pleasure in
Mm,
doing the dishes,
yeah.
in calling, making those doctor's appointments or taking out the, recycling, whatever it is, we open this awareness and then we can tap into it.
Hmm.
And I want to speak to what you said about shame,
Hmm.
and especially women. There's a whole chapter in the book that I call Shame on Who? Because we have been enculturated into to be shamed and to be ashamed of our bodies, our sexuality, and our desires.
Hmm.
And shame has been weaponized against us.
Yeah.
And so what happens, it's like you mentioned the patriarchy. I call it the puritanical patriarchy. Um, it uses fear to control us, right? So they pit women against each other, right? In the patriarchy, it's like keep the women fighting for the man's attention, and then they won't come together using all of their brilliance and creativity and power to demand equality, right? I mean, even in 2024, women in the US made 81 cents to the dollar that men made.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I mean, which is obscene and absurd. It's been 100 years since the Equal Rights Amendment was first introduced. 100 years. Okay? So, and we're still far from it. So that's how fear is used in the patriarchy to keep us fighting against each other, the anti-trans bill, the anti-immigrant, all of this is just keep people fighting against each other so we don't really turn collectively in our power against those that are oppressing us.
Mm-hmm.
Shame is the same way, except what it does is it has us turn against ourselves. So there's some judgment that's coming from out there, whether it's the society or maybe it's a parent that you were pleasuring yourself when you were 3 years old and you were shamed, or something happened, right, about our bodies and we were shamed. And so then we turn that judgment, someone else's judgment, not ours, against ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been studies that show that shame isolates us, it makes us small, it makes us retreat, and it represses us. And
Mm-hmm.
so as soon as we recognize that, hey, that is a tool of the patriarchy that's trying to squish me into a box, and I say, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you. No shame. I will not. I have in the book, in that same chapter is, name the shame game.
Yeah.
So name it.
Yeah.
When it comes up, you notice it. When I notice it in myself or in another person, you just name it. Hey, shame. It's been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then whose voice is that? Who is that? Is that coming from somewhere inside? Is that someone? Is it a parent? Is it the patriarchy? Who is it? And
Mm-hmm.
just put it out. Get it out from our internal, dialogue, the tapes in our head, and put it
Mm-hmm.
out, like on our altar table, if you will, so then
Yeah.
we can see it for what it is. Oh, they're trying to put me in a box and squish my desire and my passion and my expression. No, thank you. Thanks
Mm-hmm.
for visiting, shame, but it's time for you to move on,
Mm-hmm.
with your day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that framework. I think that, yeah, in the therapy world, we say name it to tame it. And so that's exactly what's
Mm.
happening there. It's like, and it really like, yeah, like gives it its light, it gives it its time. And it's like, okay, you can move on now. This isn't, yeah, like you're not welcome here, essentially, is the language.
Mhm.
For someone that is feeling disconnected from their pleasure right now, what would you say is the most compassionate first step that they could take towards this idea of pleasure being their responsibility?
Mm. Is to bring in self-acceptance.
Mm,
The all even though the book is about a personal pleasure practice and also, in relationship.
mhm,
And whether you're practicing solo or whoever you're practicing with, it begins with loving and accepting ourselves exactly as we are. And
mhm,
there are many, many self love invitations and practices to
mhm,
really cultivate that. And so the first thing is to just be okay. Notice if you have judgments or criticisms or comparisons, which, this is all part of the patriarchy,
mhm,
that we've been indoctrinated to compare our experience with somebody else's. And theirs is always better. The grass is always greener kind of
mhm,
thing,
mhm,
right? Instead of like, this is where I'm at. This is, and accepting where we're at right now. Okay, I haven't felt pleasure in a long time, but I want to. And just that desire, I want to, and have set a simple intention that I'm going to spend 10 seconds, 1 minute a day, a week, but maybe start with a day in
mhm,
in just focusing on pleasure in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be, you know, one hand on my heart, one hand on my belly.
Mm-hmm.
That could be, like I said, caressing your face. That could be self-pleasuring. Get out your favorite lube, you know, and explore.
Mm-hmm.
That could be taking a bath. Whatever would be most nourishing and pleasurable. You just ask yourself that simple question, what would be most pleasurable right now?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's you have this delicious chocolate bar. So you put a piece of chocolate on your tongue and you let it melt and you see how much pleasure can I get from this piece of chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
A scent, a flower, all of these, you know, simple things so that we're just kind of rewiring our awareness towards pleasure.
Yeah, I think it's like, and I like that you're naming things too that are more outside of the space of like bedroom pleasure, intimate sexual pleasure, because I think that when we can build that muscle and start to experience pleasure outside the bedroom, it makes it all that more easier to access it when we are inside the bedroom. And I think it's like, oh yeah, hey, like this is familiar. I know what this feels like. Let me lean more into this instead of trying to, yeah, block ourselves from experiencing that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yep.
Mhm. What would you say, like when somebody is trying to fix themselves or they're noting the shame, they're kind of doing the work here, but when it's coming, that fixing is coming from that more of that shame lens versus that empowerment lens. How do you see that actually blocking us from pleasure or even orgasm?
I see it like a dam,
Hmm.
actually,
Hmm.
as a metaphor.
Yeah.
And we are you said name it to shame it. I have a game that I've been playing with myself for about 25 years,
Hmm.
which is about naming the different parts of myself
Yeah.
when I get to know them. And as
Hmm.
soon as I recognize that, oh, that's something, name it, right? Name it to know it too.
Hmm.
um, and to become more intimate with this part. And so if there and within, and I call this our inner pantheon, like the Greek or Roman, right, gods,
Yeah.
we all have an inner pantheon of all the different parts of ourselves.
Hmm.
And in each of our inner pantheons is a wounded child, no matter who you are.
Hmm.
In each of our inner pantheons is an inner lover or wild sensual self.
Yeah.
They might be the same, they might be different, you know, but we have, you know, that's universal. And so if our whole inner pantheon is not along for the ride, is not aligned with your intention, whatever intention you want for your pleasure, for
Hmm.
to own your pleasure, for your sensual and sexual fulfillment, then it's not going to work out well.
Hmm.
So we need to turn. So what I found with, you know, is that most of us, it's the inner kid that feels unsafe, that feels was shamed, as you know, in our childhood,
Hmm.
that is the one that we need to just love into wholeness and make sure that they're along, that we have them, you know, I call her little Elana. I get her like on my lap. I got you, girl. I got your back. And no
Hmm.
matter what happens, no matter what anybody else out there does, I've got her, and
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of her, and I'm going to stand up for her. And so it's really, and there's a guided journey about in the book, connecting with this part of ourselves, our
Hmm.
wounded kid, and loving it and really tending to that part. And
Hmm.
so um, that is, if there are parts of ourselves, and I have a big disassociated D, I call her, that leaves my body, that I spent, you know, the first 30 years of my life mostly in the golden place, which was disembodied, like
Hmm.
disassociated, like just
Hmm.
going through the motions, doing what everyone else wanted me to do, you know, being the good girl, all that stuff. So we have to bring her in. If we don't, then guess what? Which is what I did in my younger adulthood. Had a lot of disassociated sex, right?
Hmm.
I wasn't
Hmm.
in my body. I wasn't, you know, I didn't know what I wanted, didn't know what to ask for. And so we have to get to know these parts and really embrace them, to bring them along so that when we are in the bedroom,
Hmm.
you know, and I'm starting to disassociate, now I have practices like I'll or touch myself, you know, on my heart, you know, bring myself in. If
Hmm.
I'm feeling little Ilana is feeling a little hurt, then I can give her voice. I can tell that to my spouse and say, my little kid, needs to pause right here. And I
Mm-hmm.
just need to tend to her. Or could you give me a hug because I'm feeling, a little vulnerable right now and a
Mm-hmm.
little
Mm-hmm.
reactivated. So the more we know these parts of ourselves and the more intimate we are with them, the more we can really uh, love them, know when they're coming forward, so that they're not going to be a dam to
Mm-hmm.
block our sensual, sexual fulfillment and exploration and pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that metaphor. And thank you, yeah, so much for all the depth that you're offering around this topic. And when oftentimes when I'm working with people, I'm hearing the consistency being the piece. And so I like that you're saying like it can just be these smaller 10-second practices even. Or I think when sometimes when people put voice to of like what it can look like, people have this realization of like, oh, okay, like maybe I am actually tapping into pleasure. I didn't know I wasn't calling it that necessarily. One of the ones that I like is when we are stepping into the shower, right? Like you probably set your water faucet to the most perfect spot. You know exactly where it is, where that dial is to get the perfect temperature for yourself. That can be a pleasure practice. And so when I hear consistency, and I'm curious what you have on this, but what would you tell somebody that is maybe getting down on themselves because they're struggling with the consistency behind having a regular pleasure practice?
Again, gentleness, forgiveness with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness. Just be like you would treat the person or pet or being who's easiest for you to love,
Mm-hmm.
right? Always bring that person back or that being, that pet. Be like, how would you treat this person if they were not doing their regular pleasure practice that they had committed to?
Mm-hmm.
You'd probably be generous with this person, right? You'd be like, you know what? Today's a new day.
Mm-hmm.
This moment is a new moment. Let's try it right now. Let's
Yeah.
try it right now because bringing ourselves, we spend so much time in our heads in thinking about what happened in the past and reviewing, right? What happened, what I could have done, what I should have done, da, 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 or what he said, what she said, or projecting into the future about, well, this is what I want, this is what I want it to be, this is, instead of just here right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is all we ever have,
Mm-hmm.
is right here, right now. And so starting right now, when you realize it's like, okay, I'm going to be gentle. I'll be gentle with myself. I love the self hug. Give
Mm-hmm.
yourself a self hug. Sometimes I like to rock, because you just
Mm-hmm.
like rocking yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
so good. And you're taking care of yourself. And then, okay, I'm going to start again. And it's a practice, it's not a perfection.
Yeah.
It's a practice. And so every moment we have a new chance. It's a fresh slate, really,
Mm-hmm.
to just
Mm-hmm.
be like, okay, I'm going to commit again. And the thing about noticing what practices you have in your life that are enriching your life and are beneficial. And
Mm-hmm.
you may not always want to do that practice, and it could be a therapy practice, right? It could be a meditation practice, it could be a yoga practice, could be a running practice, whatever. It could be a journaling practice, a painting, any kind of practice that you have that brings benefit to your
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And when sometimes you may not always feel like going to therapy, I'm sure you have clients who are like, however, by the end of the session, they're like, yes, that was, you never think that was a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Mm-hmm.
good. It was enriching. I feel better that
Yeah.
having done that. Same thing with the pleasure practice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just about getting into the rhythm and the groove of like, okay, I don't even need to feel like it. I
Mm-hmm.
just need to ask myself the question,
Yeah.
what would be most pleasurable right now? And then give that to yourself, even if it's 10 seconds or 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that. What is a belief that you think that people need to release in order for pleasure to really expand?
Deservability.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because of this puritanical patriarchy that we, in the air we breathe,
Mm-hmm.
is this work, we have to work first. You have to get your work done, and pleasure is frivolous. And how can you, wow, democracy is on the line right now. People are dying. We've got, all the horrors. I mean, we're living in a horror show right now, really. A lot of beings. You and I, we are so blessed. And I'm so delighted to be in this conversation with you. And may all the listeners also recognize the blessings in their life. And there are many, many, many humans on this planet now who are in, horrifying conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will have us be like, well, wait a second, how could I, the guilt, that how can I focus on pleasure when this is happening? We must focus on pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Not only because it's a revolutionary act to free ourselves from the patriarchal prison that the patriarchate wants to keep us in. Oh no, we are freeing ourselves, and we're freeing each other. Also, it will fuel us and create resilience to be able to be courageous and kind. When we're to be able to go, all those people who are in Minnesota right now, who are out on the streets, we've got people, I know in the Bay Area as well, everywhere across this country, who are showing up to provide protective presence for the immigrants in their neighborhood. And not only the immigrants, the people who just happen to, that the white supremacists are going after, people who are black and brown, right? Who speak Spanish or a different language. So for us to be able to show up in our communities and in this moment when we have to be in our hearts, in our bodies, in our fully, embodied, a pleasure practice, is going to sustain us, is going to fuel us. And I know it has for me like nobody's business over the past 5 years since my spouse and I have had this practice. And I have been more than ever involved in my local community. And that's why I can, because I'm filling myself up, and then I have overflow. And then I have overflow to go into my family and to go then into my community and out into the world.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And luckily for us, you have a book that you wrote to explain all of this for us, right? So I definitely want to give space to be able to talk through the book. And so can you just tell us a little bit about what the Sure Thing, your book, it serves as a roadmap to this journey. What does it look like?
That's right. It does. It's called The Sure Thing, a pleasure practice to revive the spark, whether that's a spark in a relationship or the spark within ourselves, or all of the above. And I call it a playbook. It's an interactive playbook. We've gotten some great praise and about, one of the therapists who wrote a review said, I've never read a book with so many exercises for people to be able to connect with themselves and with each other. And so I'm just delighted to have it out in the world. Just February 3rd is when it came out. And so this was a practice that I created, that my spouse and I started over 5 years ago, that has been such a miracle in my life. That about 6 months into our weekly practice, after we did our Sure Thing, and often we'd high five afterwards because it was like so simple, so profound. Over a decade, Rachel, of gunk and built up and withholds almost dissolved overnight, because it wasn't about who approached, who didn't, who in the mood or not. It's just, no, we're turning towards each other. Our intention is to deepen in intimacy, connection, and pleasure. So about 6 months after we're having doing this practice, I said, honey, I think I'm going to have to write a book, because I can't keep this just to ourselves. It's been so phenomenal. So there you go. So that's what inspired the book. And the book then takes the reader through identifying your own intention. If the intention that we have turns you on, take it. And if there's something else, then there are exercises to have you identify, what is my intention that's going to inspire and motivate me to have a weekly Sure Thing.
Yeah.
And then how do you do that? And so the guidebook, it's interactive. There are journaling pages. There's lots of beautiful art that I hired a local artist to make, you know, art in it because I
Hmm.
wanted it to be beautiful and I wanted it to be empowering. And it
Hmm.
is really a journey of uh, falling in love with ourselves so that we can bring more love into the world. And
Hmm.
when you know when I am loving myself, when I have more love for my partner, I have more love for my family,
Hmm.
and so on. And so you can get the book at my website, which is surethingexperiment.com. You can also get it at Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Apple Books. And
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we'll definitely link that in the show notes for people to grab
fabulous.
that. And yeah, for others that are maybe wanting to work with you or hear more about you or just be in your space, in your presence, you mentioned the website. What about any social medias that you would like for
Yeah.
people to follow you on?
Sure. I'm on Facebook,
Hmm.
Elana Auerbach. You can find me there and also on Instagram.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I would love to have you join and follow. And I will be having an online class. It'll be an online experience of from the Sure Thing Love Experiment. We'll create a love laboratory, have a weekly uh, time when we come together on Zoom that I'm calling the Sure Thing 2026 Spring Challenge,
Hmm.
where it'll be support to have your weekly Sure Thing. And we'll be sharing and we'll be inspired by other people, what they're doing for their Sure
Hmm.
Thing. And we'll go through the book and more. It'll be
Oh, that sounds
really
beautiful.
pleasurable.
Yes, yes. Oh, well, thank you so much. Yes, of course, for the book, for the work that you're doing, and for, yeah, just bringing voice to this thing being a possibility for others in the life. And thank you again so much for coming on to the show today. It was really an honor to have you.
Oh, thank you for hosting, Rachel. Really a delight. Thank you.